Welcome to Naturally High, the podcast for those ready to transform their lives through holistic healing and empowered self-discovery. I'm your host, Jeanne Foot, a lifelong learner trained in addiction, mental health, and trauma recovery, and your guide on this journey. On this show, you'll find transformational tools, inspirational stories designed to help you break through addiction, trauma, and adversity of any kind. In a world overflowing with information, we focus on real change, understanding the why behind your patterns and forging new pathways to wellness. Join me at therecoveryconcierge.com and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Together, let's change not just the conversation around mental health and addiction, but how we treat it and how you treat yourself. Hello and welcome to season 2 of Naturally High. I couldn't be more thrilled to be here with you today. And if you're a previous listener or subscriber, I really appreciate you being here. And I want you to know how much you are appreciated, because without you guys thinking that this is valuable, this means nothing. And if you're listening for the first time, thank you. I believe and hope that you'll find intriguing guests who are leaders in the field, as well as innovative and sustainable ways of healing from addiction, mental health, trauma, or any kind of adversity, so that you may obtain integrated wholeness in every aspect of your life. And that's what's something I really believe, that unless we have a lifestyle redesign, there's always going to be something vying for you. The drugs, the substances, the deceptive, addictive behaviors and cycles will always be pulling you back because they have an exhilaration of feeling good. And that's what Naturally High is all about. We want to find healthier ways of feeling high and feeling good because we all like to feel good. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm your host, Jeanne Foot, and I'm really, as I've mentioned, excited to be here. But what I'm proud about is that I've been in recovery now for 33 years. And the person I entered when I was in recovery was completely broken. She was filled with self-hatred and literally had no tools at all. And today, as a wiser elder, also I like to think of myself as a hipster at the ripe age of 66, I'm fully enjoying my second rebellion. After years of living with toxic shame, I finally feel more comfortable in my own skin. I own my own opinions and not easily influenced by others. Not anymore. And I also have a tenacious spirit. And so with that tenacity, it's really kept me wondering, how do we do better? Can we be better at just about anything in life? Not that I want to obtain excellence in everything, but that's not such a bad idea. But I think what I'm saying is that when outcomes are really poor at best, trying to find better ways of finding sustainable change, transformation, recovery, healing from intergenerational trauma is not a bad ideal at all. So Naturally High was designed to support how we can optimize and become the most heroic versions of ourselves. And I think being human, we're just complex beings. And I think the quicker and the faster we learn and embrace this, that being human is not always logical. We're highly emotional creatures. And that's why we do things that don't always serve us. We know different, but when we know better, we should do better. But that's not always the case. So how do we get from knowing to doing to implementation to truly thriving? And that's what Naturally High is really about, is how do we overcome our isms, for want of a better expression, whether it be from substance abuse, mental illness, it could be sex, it could be work addictive behaviors, it could be any maladaptive cycle that finds ourselves. Food is a big one here as well. Codependency in relationships. And whatever it is, we want to find recovery. We want to find pure, sustainable transformation and change from that. And so this is still the same. That part of the show really hasn't changed. But what has changed is there's a strong need to educate, advocate, and empower others to utilize newer models of care. And as the emerging evidence-based tools come out, there's a bit of a reluctance, or a time lag, I should say, for these tools to catch up and become more mainstream. And with, how do I say this? I'm just going to say it. With global success rates being so poor in mental health and addiction in particular, how we talk and treat about these very issues has to really change. And so I'm hoping that we can move the conversation on this collectively together so we can do better. And the issue is, I feel, is that traditional recovery still focuses on making behavioral change without really understanding our subconscious emotional drivers. Now, our subconscious brain, our subconscious mind is really responsible for all our emotional decisions. So that's why it knows it shouldn't do certain things, but it does it in spite of. And so we can temporarily dial down behaviors, especially under pressure, and get a reprieve from something. I would say reprieve from the acting out, but it comes back with a vengeance without us attaining true freedom when we are really not understanding what's driving our triggers. And so when we look at change, if we could look at how do we make a change that's sustainable, we need to peel back the layers and we need to understand what is really driving us. Otherwise, it will continue to influence how people behave and show up in their life. That would be you, that would be me. And we adapt because we want to feel connected. And adaption, we trade our authenticity for connection. This is something we learn as a young child, and we'll talk about later in another show for sure. But what I mean by that is, who do you need to be in order to feel safe? So as a child, you may needed to be that people pleaser, the caretaker, the academic, the athlete, because you needed the adults in your life to be predictable for you. And that may not have been an option for you. So therefore, you have to adapt so that you can keep your life safe. Now, what the problem is what works as a child as a beautiful strategy becomes our demise in our adult relationships. Because if you're still trading who you really are just to feel connected and liked, then you can know how that can end. It's going to be a disaster. That's exactly what happens. You become very unhappy. That's what I mean by that. All these light up our brain chemistry in the same ways, which basically reinforces the cycle we're trying to get rid of or outrun from ourselves instead of being liberated from it. So my passion came for teaching based on what didn't work for me. I didn't really find this work. This work found me. I already had another career. I feel that I resisted at first. I resisted a lot of things in my life, but I think I really resisted the pull to be an addiction counselor, to want to help people, not to help people. I've always wanted to help people. I'm definitely a deep empath, but I think to really make a career out of it. And I didn't even see how I could possibly do that. I entered into recovery in the early 90s, and that was before trauma was trendy and nobody knew what trauma was. They knew what physical trauma was if someone had a motor vehicle accident, but they sure as, let's swear, I don't know if I am allowed to, they sure as hell really didn't know what emotional trauma was. And it was really shocking to me that after full disclosure, when I hit a first rehab at the age of 33 with 3 young children and a husband and a white picket fence and all the things, that nobody was really interested in my sexual abuse history, which was complex and for multiple years as a young kid. So the only focus was really on the substance. And even though I'm never going to deny that, that wasn't the emotional root driver of why I was acting out. I was acting out because I had really lived with complex PTSD for it ends up for like over 5 to 6 decades before I really got the help I needed. And we're always in process, right? Like it's never, ever, ever, ever done. We're never there yet. So I had the privilege of utilizing my lived experience and clinical expertise to support and mentor others who were seeking change from substance and mental health illness and addiction. And I'm just an avid learner and I'm committed to being the best version of myself. And there's nothing that fuels me more than when I see others light up and fully own their potential, renegotiate their own playbook, and turn their setbacks into beautiful, beautiful opportunities. So, this is the first episode after 2 year sabbatical. So, I'm excited because I think there's so much about this that will feel comfortable and the same, but yet still very different. Because as I said, when we learn more, we do more. And I really wanted to really upgrade in many aspects, upgrade in the terms of the quality of the programming we'll be bringing you, the guests, the practices and tools. And when I say practices, evidence-based practices and tools. And this is really for anyone, whether they're an individual or family member, or even a coach or a professional behavioral health specialist who really is looking to look at how they can up level in their own life, as well as how do they help their clients as well. And is any of this helpful? And the answer is yes. There's be so much here. We talk about safe trauma, healing. We talk about holding safe space. There's just so many tips and tools. And I feel that it will be worthy of you listening. And I hope to make you worthy of you listening. So I feel like sometimes dismantling the comforts of what we know in life can feel really, really scary. And it takes immense courage to really step back from something that could be working for us, whether that's the relationship, whether it's a business. And we have comfort and perks, like, when we do things and that suit us, but we know that it's not really going to take us all the way. We know that there's something more for us, but we stop and say, well, who am I to complain? My life's pretty good. Like I have this and I have that. And you have the comforts of what maybe not everybody has access to. And then you think to yourself, well, I shouldn't be complaining. I should be happy. But there's more. And that's what was going on for me when I stepped back from Naturally High. It was supposed to be a 4-month hiatus. It ended up being 2 years. And I had to confront a lot of my own demons. And there were some practicalities that needed to be paid attention to as well, and choices. And that's what really allowed me to step away. I stepped away because I wanted to be more intentional with what I did with this podcast. And I feel like that goal has been achieved. This is one of those teachable moments. What I know is that fear expands with time. And so if we don't conquer fear quickly, it will conquer us. So think of a bread of dough ready to get baked in the oven, and you just let it sit and it rises. That's what happens with fear. It's normal for fear to grow, especially when we don't take action, but we don't know this. So we're trying to outrun it, squash it out, thinking that we can, outpace our fear. And doubt and perfectionism seeps in and it takes on a life of its own. And that's a very normal process, but we're moving away from what we're comfortable with and we move on to something else. And this has been the very process with me. Like, even to record today, like, I wanted it to be perfect. Really? Is there such a thing? And yet it really couldn't be, because I was trying to, oh yeah, I should just tweak it this way. I should tweak it that way. But I was really looking for the best possible version I could bring to you. And yet the best possible version, that version will never exist because it's an impossible goal to attain. And so just learning to work with that and get more comfortable with that is really a teachable lesson. And I think that's for many of us. So the moral of the lesson is really, if you have fear of any kind, make friends with it. Just know that it can recede into the background as opposed to front and center. And then allow yourself to do what you need to do, because the more you execute on fear, it becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. So what I learned through my own lived experience, and I spoke about that just before, that, when we know better, we must do better. And what does that really mean? Well, for me, it means raising our standards. And in my formative years, when I didn't have many tools or really healthy emotional resilience either, I don't know. I felt like I could get away with things, but getting away with things in life is really not the answer. Yeah, we can get away, but at what cost and to whom? And sometimes we think we can pull things off and we can fool other people, but here's the thing, you're never going to be able to fool yourself, right? And so I didn't get that lesson until much later. Oh my goodness, I had to slow down before I recognized that that was something that I was cheating myself on. And so when we're doing something different for the first time, no matter how uncomfortable it is, I think we have to say to ourselves is, we have nothing to lose and everything to gain. And that leaves us in a win-win. Like, at the worst case scenario, we're back to where we started, right? We can't be any worse off by trying something. So I'm very proud to say that the work I've done over the past 15 years has been life-changing for the people we work for. And I'm going to share some of my methodologies and proprietary tools that I use with people so that you can use them in your practice. And if there's a desire to learn even more, then that's something else that we can step into and talk about at another time. But I think what the sabbatical did was give me space. And as someone who had a ferocious appetite for everything, we really do have to be more discerning in life. And that's taken me a long time to recognize, thinking I could do it all, but at what cost, right? We can do it all, but at what cost to our dreams, our goals, our legacy? Like, you can't do it all. And unfortunately, I think we've been sold a bill of goods to think that we can do it all. And I think that we're fooling ourselves believing so. So stepping back allowed me to access my creative process, to create some space for some deep personal reflection that's not always comfortable. And as a result, I think I've become a different evolution of who I was in my personal and professional practices. And as a result, I have created space for this deep reflection, and I found an evolution in both myself personally and professionally. So, some of my teachable moments for stepping back have been life changing, which I said before. And, you may say, well, am I being dramatic? No, I don't think I am. So, I'll explain what I mean by that. So, if I can get up the courage to bust through my fear, then whatever that may be, and show up in life as opposed to hiding in life, then that is really life changing. And it may be something that seems so normal or regular, but at the same time, it can be so different. I'm an avid learner. So anybody who knows me knows this. I do have a ferocious appetite for learning, but this has been a season of integration. I have to say that even though I've done things like I've dove into Stoicism, I've dove into positive psychology, neuroscience, becoming certified in breathwork this weekend, peak performance, and what are the levers that can really change things, Stoicism, positive psychology, and on I can go. So that's not a complete list, but I feel that I've slowed the learning down, even though there's so much I still want to learn, and have allowed for integration, which I think is really it's the application of how well we're doing when we learn. So without that, we can just be a consumer of content and never do anything with it. And then that would be such a waste and a shame. So I'm going to share a personal moment that I think really is worthy of sharing because I don't think many people can say this. I spoke with my husband beforehand, so he is fully on board knowing that I'm sharing this with the world. But I'm in a 44-year-old marriage. I got married at the tender age of 22. So 45 in next spring, March. And my husband was not much older than me, 24. And we had good, like, paperwork. Like, we looked really good on paper, same lineage, same background. Parents were very complimentary, families were. However, we both had severe trauma and severe histories. And we won't go into details right now, but he buried his. I always knew about mine, and I grew and evolved. And he found it harder to do, which there's no judgment here at all. But what happened was, after 44 years of marriage, I find myself falling in love with my husband. And we have a beautiful, we went from needing to either, like, we were on the brink. We were on the brink of, like, either we're going to speak to a lawyer, or we're going to speak to a therapist. Like, we need help because where we landed was extremely painful, and finding a pathway, like, just go to a therapist. It sounds easier, but there's a lot of blame and shame in this process. And when you've got two unhealed people who really still have trauma, the blame and shame can really get in the way. And so we can't really understand context. We're stuck on content. And that's a whole nother show I want to do another time. So what do I mean by that? He said, she said, the blame, shame, rather than how does this make this person feel when they're really struggling with or hearing this for the first time? Or they've been told that. We disregard that part of it. And so we go back and forth, and there's a lot of mudslinging, I guess, in relationships. And we learn from imperfect families and imperfect parents. So we play out sometimes that cycle, not always, but sometimes. And what we have done is we have managed to renegotiate the terms of our relationship and really fall in love with each other, have a comfort around each other, have a shared joy that we have with our two grandchildren. And I want to talk about relationships because I think so often people just jump ship. There are times where one has to leave relationships because it's not safe, or it could be dangerous, simply that, or it could be just not a good fit. And I'm not saying that people should stay. What I'm saying is that too often people don't do the work first and then they jump ship and then they go into a new relationship and they really take the same issues into another relationship. So that's what I'm most proud of. And as I mentioned, we have this shared joy with our two grandchildren. There's nothing more beautiful than having a second chance to heal your inner child by being a profound witness and watching your grandchildren do everything and marvel in their wonder as if they're doing it for the first time. And this is the strangest thing about being a grandparent, because if you're a grandparent, you obviously being a parent, which means that you have seen all this before, but yet it feels so different. And it's such a silver lining to be able to witness this, to play like a child again with glee and wonder. And it's something I never expected, but I cherish so much. So if children are not accessible to you within your family, your relationships, maybe volunteer or become a mentor, or find a buddy to some child or children or even an animal. I think you can get so much joy from even animals who need so much more than what they have already. I believe you will find it immensely rewarding. So, how many have you really listened to somebody when they speak to you? If you listen closely, you can tell a lot about a person by the way they speak. Now, people who have had obviously mental health, addiction, trauma issues, you may be framing your comeback and not able to listen. And that was me for a good period of time. And now I actually am a really good listener. Definitely, if you're a counselor or coach or a therapist, you have to be able to listen. Otherwise, you can't really do your job. So, what I notice is you'll see patterns about people's thoughts and beliefs, and whether they're negative or limiting. I had the unexpected pleasure of sitting beside a gentleman in a restaurant. We were a group of 8. I didn't know this couple, and I sat next to him. And in a very short period of time, I understood who I was sitting next to and who I was talking to. Very nice gentleman, no judgment around that. But how he valued certain things and his thoughts and beliefs were very interesting. So when we got in the car afterwards, I said to my husband, I said, "What did you learn about Bob?" And he says to me, "I don't know. What do you think?" I said, "Well, he mentioned money about 15 times." So within the conversation of an hour before we were going having dinner and then going on to a show, he must have talked about money and or references to money over and over again. So, and whether that person's values, whether it's their beliefs, whether they're limiting or negative, you can tell if someone has a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And based on your mindset is an extremely good predictor of how well that person has a chance of achieving their dream or creating a dream life. And, if we understood the manual for how we work and operate, our thoughts, our emotions, our behaviors, it becomes really easy to change it, but we're not taught this. So it's really hard to really go there and figure out how to do that unless we really have that penchant or an appetite for it. Yeah, I'm feeling very grateful that I've just always naturally had a ferocious appetite, especially after my formative years where a lot of it was wasted. So was my education. I woke up when I became more conscious in my life. That was the first thing I wanted to do. I wanted to learn everything, which can be an addiction within itself. And so now, as I said, I'm in the integration years and I'm slowly starting to recognize there's value in slowing down and giving ourselves the space to understand what's alive and true for us. And that's what I've been doing. Yeah, our programming is very similar to, as one of my coaches had said to me, was it's like you want to hook up to the right Wi-Fi signal. And our behaviors and emotions are pretty automatic. So they come from our formative years, the stories that we tell ourselves, whether they're true or not. If we have tens of thousands of thoughts a day, we'd be hard pressed to remember 10. It's so interesting. Like, what are we telling ourselves all day long? Oh, I can't do this. I'm not good enough. I never measure up. I don't know. You think you're the only one in the world who can achieve something? No, I don't really believe that's true. So, as I was talking about, we're reliving these stories from our formative years, and we want to attune ourselves to the right frequency. And that could be in the sense, think of a Wi Fi that we're hooking up to the right network, or which I would say is really your community or family or the people you spend the most time with, because you are the average of the five people you spend the most time. So, if you're not really liking where you're at, you do need to upgrade your network, your community, your connections. Certain people we can't always do what we need with or want to, but what we can do is learn from them. We can learn that, yes, we may not be able to change them, but we can learn what we will and will not tolerate with someone and understand what is our non-negotiables. As I always say to my clients, we want to know what we will and will not tolerate. So we have to be able to know what is our boundary and our bottom lines around certain things and certain conditions. Because if we don't, those shadow parts really are parts that really hijack our life, and we don't live fully. We're just existing. And people talk about going from surviving to thriving, good, better, best. I talk about surviving to thriving to flourishing. Like, can we really flourish in life? Can we reach our fullest potential? Is that something that interests you? And that comes from looking at our stories, our beliefs, and then looking at what needs to be realigned or go or stay, and redesign our life in a way that really matches who we are today. And we can't continue to overextend ourselves and people please and are saying no when we need to say yes, because all that happens is we become resentful, we become angry, and that grows. And that has a toll on not only your physical health, but your mental health as well. So the world has some serious issues to contend with right now. And honestly speaking, to be speaking about how much agency you have over your life may sound trivial when I believe moral and ethical deprivation is at an all-time low. So why is this important? When did truth have to be relevant? But we're fighting for exactly that in these times. So Naturally High was innovated really out of a strong need to feel different and healthier, safer. We are literally wired for comfort as humans and will repel from anything uncomfortable, which is why fear plays such a big role in our life. It doesn't feel good. It's a primary animalistic programming that really has to come from the prehistoric days, which serves us well. But in modern day life, it actually trips us up. And so we do want to find ways that we can feel good and healthier ways. And that was one thing that was missing when I first entered recovery. I was extremely flat, partly because my mood was flat. I hadn't healed fully for years. I was abstinent, but I would never say I was well. I struggled a lot with depression and anxiety and even probably ADHD, but managed to get by until just recently. I never really showed up in my life because we adapt. We adapt all the time, and our adaptations can serve us or not serve us depending on what we're doing in our life. So here you'll find a lot of tools and methods that I believe will be helpful. They're kind of like biohacks, really, because not everything about change has to be painful. Not everything about change has to be long. And I believe that one of the things that has really helped me tremendously, and I offer this to you, is to give yourself some compassion and grace that you would a good friend. Because I grew up with such toxic shame and self hatred and self loathing that the fact that I can do anything today is quite a miracle within itself. But I never recognized how pervasive it was in how I see the world, how my outcomes, my success in life. And obviously, we're many parts, all of us. So it doesn't really matter. There's good and bad parts of all of us. And it's not necessarily that they're good or they're bad. There's positive and negative attributes that we have that either help us or harm us, really. And so I just feel that we have to embrace all of our being, not just the parts. And I think our shadow parts hard to brace, but they're really there to teach us some beautiful lessons. And we're all in recovery for something, right? That's what I believe. I say maybe life. Being human's hard, it's complex, and we all have something that undermines our happiness and success. but we can't continue to operate with the same behavior that brought us to the edges in our life. So if we're at close to the edge or we're hurting in some way, or you know that you need to do something different, don't expect anything to be different without doing something different. And that's the purpose of dis-ease, misalignment. Think of dis-ease within our body, like that anxiety, that nagging doubt, whatever it may be. It's because we're not in integrity with ourselves. And so I talked about the state of the world. In a world full of division and political upheaval, this is why you need to be strong in integrity with yourself, because people will pull you all different ways. And I think that is really important. Like, we want to be fortified for what's to come, because if we continue at the pace of life, which is, ferocious, I think we weaken ourselves tremendously. So the work of the recovery concierge I've been doing for the last 15 years is a holistic, and it's more than mind, body, spirit. It's looking at someone's life from every possible lens and saying, where is there misalignment? Where do we need to, fine tune? And what are the levers that we can pull so that this person can really be the most authentic, fulfilled version of themselves? And why not? That's available to each and every one of us. So we're going to be sharing more about that later, not meaning later today, but later in the upcoming season. But I just wanted you to know what you can expect from Naturally High, because I'm sure you're curious, aren't you? So one of the things I wanted to say to you, your feedback is so critical because it will create a vital role in shaping future content. So please reach out to comments. Please tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. Not as much, hopefully not as much, but tell us what you like and tell us what you would like to hear, because we can help shape discussions and teachable moments around your comments. So some of the things that I think about all the time are looking at building a case for 21st century healing. So what does that really mean? I think medicine has yet to catch up with looking at us as one organism, as mind, body, spirit, but rather we treat the brain and the body separately. And this is particular in mental health, particular in physical illnesses like heart disease, cancer, and hypertension. All of these metabolic syndrome are all contributing factors or results of partly genetics, but also partly lifestyle and lifestyle choices. And so what happens is if someone's been under a tremendous amount of trauma or stress over their lifetime, how they, I would say, metabolize that in a way, and how it shows up in their body in physical pain or dis-ease or misalignment is really a result of that. So what I don't understand is that you can get a person who's not a substance user who goes into a doctor's office. Maybe they have heart disease, metabolic issues, whatever the issues they're going in for. And they're not talking about what's going on at home. They're not talking about what's going on at work. Maybe there's tremendous pressure. Maybe there's relationship issues. There could be even dangerous relationship issues and safety issues, domestic violence, intimate partner violence. And nobody's talking about that. They're not even asking them, are they drinking at night, every night? And some people will not even be self-disclosing to a doctor unless the doctor really inquires about that. So we just really need to look at us as one organism as a whole rather than separately. And I think if we did this, not only would we get amazing results, but you'd really reduce a lot of wastage and utilization in the system, in the healthcare system, because and there's a lot of misinformation around mental health and addiction in particular. Addiction's like the poor cousin of mental health. It's even worse. Like, it's like more stigmatized. That's what I mean by even worse. And there's no one size fits all. So like, why do we give such resistance and be so unwelcoming to other modalities and methods that even like there's a whole emergence of medication assisted therapy now, whether it's for drugs to help people stop destructive behaviors or whether it's psychedelics. I'm not an advocate to say that you should do it a certain way. I believe that different people need different tools at different times. And I think that we need to do our due diligence and before we shut things down and not hang on to traditional methods, which can really be somewhat limiting if we don't explore what else is out there, right? So I think we owe that to people to really do that. Wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things we'll talk about coming up would be talk therapy versus somatic therapy and why somatics has had such a big emergence in the field of trauma healing. And it's really simple, is our body really holds on to trauma. So we have to release the trauma through process work rather than being able to talk about it. And talking actually exacerbates trauma. And I had firsthand experience of that when I first went into therapy as a young woman. I really didn't understand why after leaving a therapist's office, I'd want to smoke a joint. But clearly it was very painful for me to understand what I was doing. And that perpetuated the addiction as well, along with the shame and blame, of course. You can expect to hear in future episodes how to change your story, change your life, your self-image, and a whole bunch of exciting things. I am so excited for what's coming up Naturally High. I hope that you have found tremendous value, or some value at least, I should say, in what I've talked about today. And I'm hoping some of it resonates with you. We're also going to be talking about the three brains, how our intuition is really our truest brain, and how we so often discount it for very good reasons. It's just not logical, and how it can be an aid in helping you find your way through some of the changes that one may want to make. I want to thank everybody for a really heartfelt welcome. For if you're listening now, then you've listened this far. I'm hoping that you find some value in what I shared and you can resonate with some of the teachings, if any at all. I really look forward to having deeper conversations with you guys in the very near future. And I'm excited for you as well as myself. So until next time, what can you do to stay naturally high? Thank you for joining me for this episode of Naturally High. If this conversation resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or reach out to me through the links in the show notes. Together, we're changing the way the world approaches mental health, addiction, and trauma. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave a rating for Naturally High on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen so you never miss an episode. For more inspiration and resources, follow me on Instagram at therecovery_concierge or visit therecoveryconcierge.com. Stay empowered, keep rising, and I'll see you in the next episode.